Hello, Guyana, and welcome to another edition of Conversations in States. I am Malika Ramsey. Thanks very much for joining us this week. Well, Guyana is currently a buzz and a hype of conversation and activity when it comes to the Green Guyana Expo and International Small Business Summit. Now, this is very, very important because for the last few years we've been talking about our country becoming a green one, becoming a green initiative, a green economy, and so on. So it's really wonderful when we have activities and initiatives like the one we will see on the 18th, beginning the 18th to the 21st of October 2018. And on that note, it's my pleasure to welcome to our program the chairman of the Green Guyana Expo and International Small Business Summit, Mr. Eric Phillips. Sir, welcome to Conversations in State.
Thank you very much.
All right. Even though we've had several conversations, I myself have had several live television conversations with him. This is the first time he is on Conversations in State, and we definitely welcome him. I know when we in Guyana at home, he's also a household name, mind you. When we hear Eric Phillips, we always think about actor and more or less human rights and the rights for Afro Guyanese and so on. But today it is certainly different, and people may want to know how if there was some sort of magical transformation, but no. It's just to give you some background information. In 1996, Mr. Phillips co-authored the Guyana 21 plan. Of course, all of these things were designed, or I should say, are designed to improve Guyana's economy and so on in terms of development, of course, but you'll hear more of that from him. He also co-authored the Guyana, I think it is the 2030, Guyana 2030 plan. Yes, and I see he's nodding in a positive way. He co-authored that in 2015. But let's get right into what we're going to discuss today. And Mr. Phillips, I'd like to begin by quoting His Excellency President David Granger, because viewers, I'd like to also take this opportunity to remind you that the President continues to be very positive and very passionate about us going green and becoming a green state and so on. Now, I would like to begin with His Excellency, a quote from His Excellency. He said, "We see a green economy as one that sustains economic prosperity, environmental security, and social well-being." Now, because Guyana is now being exposed to this side of Eric Phillips, I'd like your sentiments on that statement, and how passionate are you that we are going to be able to secure this sort of environmental security and social well-being through development of green initiatives and so forth?
The President's initiative, Guyana becoming a green state, the world's first green state, it's not only strategic in terms of Guyana having sustainable economic growth, but it's critical for Guyanese. Of course, we've signed Agenda 2030 and the 17 SDGs, which talks about equitable, inclusive, environmentally friendly, low carbon development. So we've signed that. We're aware of climate change. Look what's happening in the States today. Look what's happening in the Caribbean. We're exposed to climate change and the damages of climate change. You can plan an economy, and overnight, climate change could destroy you and devastate it.
Indeed.
So in the context of Guyana, the President is correct. Of course, people are concerned or get confused because we've found oil. But oil has its pros and its cons. If you were to look at Venezuela or Trinidad, they have oil and they became oil economies. And when the price of oil fluctuates, their economies fluctuate. Right now, Venezuelans are starving. The price of oil is low.
Yes.
With us in Guyana, we're looking at an oil sector, not an oil economy. The oil sector will give us revenues that would help us to create a green economy. And with that green economy, it allows us to create more jobs, it allows us to have sustainable economic growth, and it allows us to work within the framework of our obligations of Agenda 2030 and COP21, which is climate change. So I'm very, very passionate about it. It's an extension of the Guyana 21 plan because we always talked about sustainable growth, 20 to 30%. We talked about inclusive growth. And more importantly, we need to take advantage of our comparative advantage. Our comparative advantage is that we can grow 200 fruits and vegetables and another 50 herbs. We do nothing with that, and that's because we never had cheap energy or renewable energy. That's on the horizon. So we could see ourselves now truly feeding the Caribbean, being the breadbasket of the Caribbean. Of course, we're the second most endowed nation in the world with fresh water. We've done nothing with it. Suriname has a company called Amazon Resources that's purifying it and shipping it out in tankers. We have 16 to 18 million hectares of pristine forest, the lungs of the earth. We have lots of land, we have lots of sun. So, in the context of Guyana creating a path to sustainable development, it's the president's vision. We need to have a green state, which is underpinned by a green economy, and within that green state, we have green living.
Before we go forward, and even before we talk about the expo in itself and the role of small businesses, sorry, you're not the first person I would have heard before talking about making Guyana the first green state in the world.
In the world.
Now, I find this very, very interesting, and I like your sentiments on it because there are so many other countries that are actually ahead of us in terms of trying to go green and promoting green. Why do you believe it is that there still is not a country in the world that is a green state?
Well, because they are very brown economies. The developing world is brown, totally dependent on oil and oil industries and cars with smog and all those types of things. We are not. So we're in a better position to overtake them because we are underdeveloped in that traditional sense, but we're going to be more developed in a green state sense more quickly. We have a small population. So for us to provide green energy to a small population is not the same as providing green energy to United States or China or India or anywhere in Europe. So our smallness, in a sense, is an advantage. Plus, we have all this patrimony that they don't have. You know, we have over 700 birds. We have all sorts of flora and fauna. We have 15% unique biodiversity. We have over 70 waterfalls. You know, we can do hydroelectric in 55 sites. All of these things our people aren't aware of, and that's why they feel confused about this green state. But we are platformed, and as the president stated, we are on an irreversible path to becoming a green state.
Now, all of that, all of these things that we have indeed, and we forget it, especially those of us, you know, and I have a colleague who always asks me, why on your programs you always have to beat up on those of us who live in Georgetown? I like to remind people that sometimes we live in Georgetown, we've been here for so long that we forget the beauty of the other parts of our country. Now, you talk about all those things that we have, the different species of birds and so on, freshwater fish and so on. How much of that, of course you may not have the actual things there, but how much of that will we see at the expo come 18th to 21st? I know it's split, there's the expo and the business summit, but how much will we actually see at the expo? Again, just to remind people and to help people to not be confused of us moving toward what should be a green state.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because the expo is designed to educate and to inform. So, for example, throughout the expo, you will get pieces of information about Guyana's patrimony. We are building and have built 3 models of greenhouses that will have efficient energy appliances. So you'll have a solar fridge, etc. So people can actually see what's going on. But in terms of energy, you'll see the whole expo is going to be powered by solar power. That's unique. And when you come there, people could see solar power. They can see how easy it is to have. As a matter of fact, all 3 houses are going to be powered by solar.
And these are actual houses?
These are actually houses that have been built. One has been built by Central Housing and Planning. Another has been built by a company called Woods Direct. The third has been built by Vulcan Forestry, Inc. And these houses are beautifully designed. They're designed to deal with airflow, etc. But apart from that, Irokrama is there, so people are going to get a chance to understand our natural patrimony. We will have brown cars, which are using gasoline. We'll have an LPG car, which is intermediate, a hybrid, and we'll have an electric car on display. So everyone could see the future of transportation. So, and we have a kid zone. We're hoping all the schools come, where you can go in there and you will be able to learn a lot about Guyana. It's an obstacle course with prizes. And when you come out of there and when you walk around that entire architecture, you'll really fully appreciate what we have in Guyana, which makes it easy for us to become a green economy and a green state.
Okay. Viewers, if you're now tuning in today, my conversation is with Mr. Eric Phillips, who is the chairman of the Green Guyana Expo and International Small Business Summit. Now, let's talk about the role, even before we talk about the summit in itself. The role. What do you expect small businesses to contribute to this for us, to us being on this path to a green state and a green economy, and how can they themselves benefit? And when I talk about small businesses, I don't necessarily mean the smaller giants. I mean the very small businesses, because it's always a concern of, for example, those businesses in communities that you would go into the ordinary communities and see how can they benefit and how can they contribute also.
Well, let me start with the three goals of the Expo and Summit. The first goal is to share with Guyana the Green State Development Strategy. We've had 7 expert groups working with United Nations Environment under the auspices of Ms. Ndibi Shears, who is the head of the Department of Environment. And they have put together more details from local expert groups what the Green State Development Strategy is. So people will have a clear understanding of what this thing is. Second goal of the Expo and Summit is to allow our small businesses to understand the massive opportunities that they have in this green economy. Part of the problem is that our companies have not been exposed to what's going on around the world. We will expose them to those things, and the Expo will reflect it. We have companies from Barbados coming in. We have companies from the UK. We have films that will be shown on TV and in the Expo on what's going on around the world. In Jamaica, for example, there's a young lady, 28 years of age, who does 600,000 chickens a year, 6 batches, 100,000 each batch, using solar power. So there are a lot of things that our small businesses will be able to see. As a matter of fact, we have over 120 exhibitors, and most of them are the small businesses you're talking about. We have a village entrepreneurship tent, which is showing what people in the villages are doing. So the Women Agro-Processing Network out to the Rupununi will be there showing what they're doing in terms of organic products, etc. So that's the second goal. The third goal is to highlight to the government and to work with them about the policies that need to be put in place to catalyze green growth. For example, electric cars, we need to have them be duty-free. Small Barbados has over 200 electric cars. We have 2, and 1 will be on display.
And again, just for the general knowledge of the viewers, and I know some of you are also tuned in on Facebook, and we would like to thank you for tuning in. For the benefit of those at home and those in the world of social media, these 2 cars, you mean we have 2 electric cars in Guyana?
Yes.
And both of them are usually, they're used on the roads?
They're being driven every day. They look like ordinary cars. It's just that they don't have carburetors and they don't fog up. And you charge them overnight at home, and you can get 168 kilometers. So when we do have the real infrastructure, we'll have charging ports throughout the country, and it's going to be cleaner and better. It holds the same number of passengers.
Quite interesting.
So come to the Expo and touch it and feel it. And
I am certainly coming just to touch the electric car. I'm very interested in that.
So the third goal is to work with the government to identify the types of obstacles that will not only allow green growth, but will give our companies a comparative and competitive advantage in the future. Our companies in Guyana are small, and that's smallness is because they're in this huge global brown economy. You look at oil, very few of our companies could participate in it because of the technology, the production methodologies, the capital. And most people don't understand that in any economy, small businesses generate 60 to 70% of the jobs. We have to do that in Guyana. Yes, we'll have a few large companies, but it's the smaller companies, the village-based companies, that will be doing this. Another booth we'll have is a youth entrepreneurship green village. So you'll see what our young people are doing with 3D graphics and all the apps and that they're creating.
Have you found that they have latched onto the business of us becoming a green state? Because I know these days they're I think they call us or them, I should say, millennials. They're more
Millennials.
into the gadgets and so on. So it's difficult sometimes, and viewers, mind you, I'm not trying to insult our young people or knock them, but this is the fact. Sometimes it's very difficult to get them to expand their thinking in terms of, because the minute you hear green state, green development, people say, oh gosh, the again.
Well, they're
come
in
this
it.
again.
They're in it without knowing it.
Hmm.
Drones. In the
Ah.
green state, drones will be used to monitor our borders. Drones will be used for agricultural purposes, for security purposes. They're into drones. All these IT and artificial intelligence things are things of the future. When you go to the hospital, it should be driven by e-commerce, by an e-architecture, which is what they're about. So indirectly, they're already there. It's not just about agriculture. It's about science. It's about technology. And that's why I'm hoping our schools come there because, we talk about innovation. And the theme of the conference and event is entrepreneurship, innovation, and sustainability. So that's intertwined with all the expos and all the summit panels, of which we have 6.
Mhm.
So our young people are already in it. What we're trying to do with the expo and the summit is to expose them to the large array of opportunities that exist. And more importantly, we're hoping that in order for us to understand our country, our schools should start thinking green, acting green. And to do that, you have to educate our people about Green Guyana. The Ministry of Communities has a program called Green Generation Guyana. They're going to be on display.
Yes.
They have a green curriculum. They have a green school. You see them running around with these green waste baskets. They're into recycling. So all of that is going to be on display. So it's a holistic approach to sustainable economic growth using our patrimony and using our global advantage. We're part of the lungs of the earth.
Mhm.
Do we continue to destroy it or do we protect it and create a carbon market so that we can have carbon trade-offs? I mean, it's a much larger opportunity in terms of creating revenues for us. We don't have to cut down our forests. We've signed the Miramata Convention, which means that we're getting out of mercury in mining, which is a brown economy. So we'll try to clean up those elements of our economy that are brown, like in mining. And they'll be on display. The
and that's-
Ministry of Natural Resources will have a booth that shows forestry, mining, and water.
Mhm. And as we clean up those, we have to ensure that what people will be losing in terms, because there are always bread and butter issues, so we have to ensure that what people will lose, we'll be able to replace it in the green state.
And that's why the Green Fund or the Sovereign Wealth Fund
Ah.
or the Natural Resources Fund is important.
Mhm.
And that's why we are taking revenues from oil to support new industries. I was part of one of the 7 expert groups, and that group was green structural transformation. That dealt with new markets, new industries, and new high-paying jobs. So as we look at what we have in Guyana, we have to target new markets.
Mhm.
And we have to generate new industries, which our small businesses will dominate. And with doing that, we'll create new, clean, high-paying jobs.
Let's talk more about the small businesses, especially Small Business Summit. What can be expected? Again, and my thing is too, how can those very small businesses benefit and how can they contribute? Because in order to benefit, you must contribute. We're
Right.
all Guyanese, we're all living
Right.
here, and we must contribute to the green state development. So let's talk about contributions expected from them and how are they expected to benefit. And I know this is the first summit, so it's expected to be annual.
Yes,
Both
this
the
is the
summit and expo.
inaugural expo and summit. We anticipate it'll be here every year because it's
Okay.
our economy. We need to, talk about it.
Mhm.
As you go into the large tent, and this tent holds 100 booths, and it's the only tent of its nature in Guyana. It's brought in specially for this event. You will find about 40 of our companies who are already in the green economy, and these are small companies. So what we did with them before they were allowed to participate by invitation, the Guyana Marketing Corporation met with them, spoke with them about their ideas, worked with them to brand themselves, to package themselves, to have business cards. Because out of this expo, we're hoping that we will create an incubator where the Small Business Bureau, the Guyana Marketing Corporation, and the School of Entrepreneurship and Business Innovation of University of Guyana will work together to start to get our companies export ready in the green economy. So they are experiencing benefits right now. The policies that we expect from the Ministry of Finance or GRA will also help them. So we're working with them to understand their needs. We're sharing with them experiences on standards, because standards is a new way of keeping our products out of global markets. So we're dealing with those things holistically. The summit itself will share with them a lot of things. So we have the Green State Development Strategy, which they need to hear about. Then we'll have green energy. We'll speak about Guyana's goal of becoming 100% renewable in 2030. We'll speak about hydro, solar, biomass. You know, we have a lot of rice, we have a lot of sugar. Those things could be converted into energy. So that's a panel, and that panel has speakers from 4 countries. Each of our panels is well endowed with international experts, including our experts. Then the next morning, we have green agriculture. Now, what is important, and this was very much appreciated by us, this is also Agriculture Month.
Yes.
When we met with the minister and with the permanent secretary, Delmaned, and with the chief person we're working with, Joanne David, they immediately incorporated the Green Expo and Summit as part of Agriculture Month. So they themselves created their panel, and they have people from 4 countries, ICA, FAO, our own experts in Berbice, Stain campus. So they've put together that, and so that panel is going to be extremely relevant to what our small businesses and our policy makers should know about Guyana using agriculture as a strategic industry for sustainable economic growth. Then we have green manufacturing. How do we take this patrimony, the fruits and vegetables, the water, the forests, the arable land, and convert it into jobs, into industries, and into areas where our small businesses can succeed? We have Dr. Shurish Narayan, who is the chairman of the Institute of Applied Science and Technology. He's going to be on that panel. On that panel, there are others. We have Mr. David Aparicio, who's a gentleman in Essequibo who's doing all sorts of non-traditional organic farming, and he's exporting. So we are going to, during that panel, talk about how we use our patrimony, how we work with energy to manufacture using our patrimony. As a matter of fact, IAS is going to be announcing a new product.
During the expo.
Right, and if you come, I guess there are only 3,000 free bottles, so come early.
Okay, I hope to be one of the 3 persons.
Right. And then we have green living. We talk about cars, transportation. We have a delegation from Barbados. There is a young lady, Joanna Edgel. She has the rights to 7 electric cars. As I said, Barbados has over 200. We have Dr. Andrew Boyle, our own. We know of him as Eureka, but his business is on green energy. His home is on green energy. His mother's farm is on green energy. And his company, Caribbean Wind and Sun, they're providing all the green energy for the entire expo for the entire 3 days. So when you come there, you'll see the panels, you'll see the easy way to connect it, and you will feel solar energy throughout there. And then, of course, we want to talk about what the prerequisites are for us to succeed. So we have Dr. Terence Blackman, who's Guyanese. He's a dean at Medgar Edwards University. He's flying in to talk about STEM. Of course, you know, we're doing very well with STEM, our young people. So he's going to talk about that. We have Dr. Paulette Bino, who is going to speak about the necessary prerequisites for us to succeed in the green economy. You know, in the green living area, we have to look at the new green city. We're 6 feet below sea level. And climate change is getting worse. Look what's going on. So we have to build a new green city powered by green energy that has green agriculture, that facilitates green living and clean living.
Are you suggesting building absortion, or would you, I mean, it may not be something official here, but, and this is not the first time we're hearing this in the public domain, but would one of the suggestions be to move the capital?
We ultimately have to move the capital, but not move Georgetown. Georgetown has a lot of investment. As a matter of fact, it's so ridiculous, it's $1 million US to get an acre of land in Guyana. And the land is all gone with oil people coming in, so prices are going to rise. but we're beneath sea level.
That's
In
it,
order
that's
for
the
us to
reality.
grow our population, and we need more people, and we have to make sure they're Caribbean people or Guyanese people first, because everybody's going to run here now.
Yes,
We have
yeah.
oil, and they'll undermine our economy by taking advantage of.
Is that, and I'm happy that you mentioned that indeed, because some people are a bit uneasy. But would that be a challenge, a major challenge for us going on the path of becoming a green state?
Yeah, the government has to be very careful.
Okay.
The people of Ghana have to be very careful.
Mm-hmm.
We will have a huge influx of people with high skills and with other goals because of oil. Oil has its own architecture, I'll put it there quietly or kindly. But we cannot be taken off path and pursue an oil economy which gets into bringing gas on shore and doing ammonia and nitric acid and polymers and plastics, similar to what Trinidad is trying to do and is now failing because of that. We need to take our oil revenues and diversify our economy. Venezuela, for example, didn't do that. Because they had so much oil revenue, they were importing 80% of their foods. Now that the oil prices are down, they're starving. We have to be smarter than that. But to a critical point, part of what our government must do, we have to look carefully at our immigration policies. Because, Guyana is the only English bridge in the Caribbean. We're on the continent, we have a cultural affinity to the
Right there.
Caribbean, but we're next door to Brazil that has 200 million people. And by the way, Brazil has 200 million cows, but that's another
That's
issue.
another conversation.
So we have to make sure that we carefully manage our growth in population and to empower Guyanese. That's why I'm also very passionate about a local content law. I mean, the government is speaking about a policy, and I understand why. And a year ago, I wrote an article stating we should not speak about local content. We should speak about national content. Because local content has international connotations with WTO, and we're bound by it. So right now, any company in the Caribbean, because of CSME, is a local company to Exxon. If it were national content, it meant that Guyanese nationals would have preference. For example, I don't know why we're giving land to foreigners. Only Guyanese should own land, but that's a whole other story. We have to be careful about our land policy. We have to be careful about our immigration policy. And we have to be careful we're not driven off our strategic and correct path of becoming a green economy to become an oil economy. Yes, we will have an oil sector, but we don't want an oil economy.
We prefer to have a green economy. It's amazing how time flies when, we're having fun. And I'm always happy when any talk about green development, green state, the environment, and so on is so lively, because we have banged it so much. People sometimes get fed up. Oh gosh, Malika, come in here to tell us about green state again. So I'm happy that this conversation indeed was a very interesting and lively one in a sense. But we don't want people to miss the essence. So before I begin to wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity again just to talk some more about, in about 2 minutes or so, about the Green Guyana Expo in terms of dates, time, and of course along with the business summit, where, how, the what, the when, and everything else.
Certainly. The expo starts on the 18th, and it's at the Ramada Georgetown Princess in Providence. We are registering people for that because we have limited spaces and we have many people from overseas. It's free to Guyanese. Free.
Guyanese.
It's free.
Okay.
It will cover, as I said, the Green State Development Strategy. It starts at 9 in the morning with the opening. The sessions are an hour and a half. We have 5 or 6 panelists, and it will share a tremendous amount of information on green living, green energy, green manufacturing, green agriculture, green financing, etc. And that's both Thursday and Friday. And if you want to attend, kindly contact us, and I can give you a number, which is 60-888-77. Send me an SMS, and I'll put you in contact with the people. The expo is on the tarmac of the National Stadium. It's a huge area we've built. It begins on Thursday at about 10, only on Thursday on 10, because a lot of schools are expected to be there and school outreaches.
This is 10 a.m.
Right.
Thursday.
And it goes until 10 p.m.
Okay.
On Friday, it opens at 2. Friday and Saturday, both days, it opens at 2
p.m.
and goes until 10 on Friday. But we plan to have an artist on Saturday night, so it will go later.
Okay.
So it's only 3 days. We're not going to do it on a Sunday.
Okay.
If there's a demand, we'll do it on a Sunday. But we thought that we would do it for those 3 days and try to bring everyone in a compact way.
Okay.
And it's free again to everyone.
To everyone. All right. Unfortunately, we are going to have to leave this conversation there. Of course, in terms of the Green Guyana Expo and the summit and the International Small Business Summit, we won't have another chance, of course, for 2018. We won't have another chance to talk to Mr. Eric Phillips, who is the chairman. We won't have another chance to talk to him here on Conversations in State. But those of you who follow me on social media and my other programs, we'll try to get him before the 18th. Just to remind the viewing public, as I said, I know currently we're live on Facebook, so we have some viewers there in the social media world, and we appreciate you joining us. But unfortunately, we're going to have to leave our conversation right there today in the essence of time. Mr. Eric Phillips, thank you so very much for coming on Conversations in State today.
My pleasure.
All right, great. Viewers, thanks for watching. Of course, I'm Malika Ramsey, and this has been Conversations in State.